The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Top of the day or the evening, I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Dudding.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
We're a program of storytelling, about storytelling, and we're storytellers. And we have a really wonderful guest who's a storyteller today.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with storytelling. And then we're going to introduce our feature and learn a little bit about her. And this is August for you guys. I know you're looking at it at a different time.
No, this is September.
This is
August for us.
And we've been out in the wilds of the Midwest in Kansas City at the National Storytelling Network, which is the big gathering of storytelling. And it was nice to meet see all those people that tell stories again, wasn't it?
Oh, there's just so much energy in the room. And there were, I think, about 250 of us.
Right, and there's a website that we want to point out that if you want to know a lot about storytelling nationally, it's
storynet.org.
Right. And there are various interest groups that you might be interested in, which deal with the specifics of producing storytelling. Storytelling in
organizations.
Right. The Healing Storytelling Alliance.
Storytelling in education. Yes.
Yeah.
Youth and education storytelling, something like that.
And
then higher education, they have a special interest group for that. And they have a discussion group on ecology and another one on interfaith story.
Right. So if you're looking for material or in those areas, if you go to the website, you can go to the special interest groups. And
which means you select groups, special interest groups. That's the button you push.
And then you go to the Healing Storytelling Alliance or the Storytelling and Organizations. And there are resources there in terms of references, bibliographies, stories, connections with people if you want to follow up. It is a great resource, and it's a point of connection. And one of our aims in doing this show is to connect you out there with storytelling so that you can become learners and storytellers and share the spirit of this movement.
Or story listeners.
Ah, that's true, because there's a lot of stories on there. So if you want to listen to a story, if TV is dull, duh.
Except for this channel.
Except for this channel. And one of the nicest things that happened out there, as far as I was concerned, was that one of our own from this region, or two of our own, the story crafters, Jerry Burns and Barry Marshall, were awarded the Center of Excellence Award. And that is given usually every year or so, because not every year does somebody raise up to that level of accolade. But they won it this year, and they're special, and they are a member of our guild, and they are local.
They're not actually members of our guild, but they're very good friends of our guild.
Friends of our guild, okay.
And they live in a little town south of here, south of... that place too.
That's Chatham, isn't it?
South of Chatham.
South of Chatham.
You're about the third or fourth exit off the Taconic as you're going southward. And Barry has produced each of my 5 CDs, so he's a blessing that way also. They tell in tandem, and they have a gazillion musical instruments. They're musical as well as storytelling aficionados. They do raps, fairy tale raps.
Their talent runs deep and rich.
Yes.
And is on to the next generation because their son, Zach, is a sophomore at SUNY Purchase studying voice and opera. and we've seen him grow up kind of fun.
Yes, yes, he was cute, curly-headed little boy, and he's not so little anymore. But I wanted to say also about them. Oh, Jerry has a PhD in social work, and she has been mentoring public defenders on how to tell their clients' stories.
Yep, it's a remarkable application of the art of storytelling and the combination of her skills and background in social welfare, and I would have to say social justice too. So it's quite remarkable.
And they also go monthly to a locked psychiatric unit in a hospital in Connecticut. And work with people there. Yeah. So they have a very, circle of excellence. Yeah, they fit. It's for a large, many years of working in storytelling and doing it very, very well. So I think they've been giving these awards since about 1996. And there may be 30 people in that category. We are each in the category of doing service in our region.
That's right. We got an award, and we got honored, and it was actually kind of a neat experience, all told. But those are other experiences that are in the past, and we build on those. But I just was thinking it was just good to get around the table with those people, and one of the other programs to go to in the winter is called Sharing the Fire. And I actually felt the spirit bubbling up in terms of what was going on there, and also got a good barbecue. There was Kansas City, so
where everything's up to date.
Everything's up to date. Oh. Well, I think we pretty much pounded this one, but
we really haven't. The National Storytelling Conference Summit is just so special that there are people that you meet that Carol Birch, who is a Circle of Excellence winner, saw our book, Our Stories Connect, about children at the well. Yeah. And she said, this should be submitted to get to the Ann Izzard Committee to get an award. And to submit it for the committee to look at. Oh. So I went, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. We'll do. We'll
do. So they're all. I wouldn't miss it except for a very good reason. Right. A very, very good reason. So, okay, enough of that. Who do we have here with us today, Joe?
Well, we have a noted storyteller, a charming and talented spinner of dreams and whimsy. Claire Nolan. Claire Nolan is here, and she's remarkable in so many ways. We'll talk a little bit about her as a storyteller. I admire her for her basic approach to life. She represents the art of storytelling well. She's an advocate for the environment. She's active up at Thatcher Park in a number of ways. She teaches English as a second language and works with newly arrived future Americans.
And the Children's
Theater
of Schenectady. She'll tell us what the right name is.
And Claire, it's just wonderful to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Kate. This is very exciting to be here.
And I almost think when I look at Claire that we know her family from her stories.
Yes, whimsy doesn't quite capture the wacky. What was somewhere in between those two.
Hit it, Sam, or whatever his name was. That story about that. Oh, the car. Okay. Bring us up to date on what's going on in the various threads of your life, because it would be helpful for the audience, and it would be helpful for us to build a little background on storytelling.
Well, you mentioned the Schenectady Theater for Children is the name of our group, but don't apologize because people give it all kinds of different combinations of that name. So it is the Schenectady Theater for Children, and we run 4 camps during the year. We just added a new camp that finished up at the beginning of August, and our second camp has finished up at the end of August, and then the kids can come back for week-long camps during their winter and spring breaks. Mm-hmm. So if you have any information, if you would like any information about any of those camps or anything that the Children's Theater is doing, I'm sure either Kate or Joe would be happy to give you my contact information.
Yeah, well, it's your contact information is on the screen, and there will be due to the delay between when we're taping and when it becomes a DVD, a slide on the Schenectady Theater for Children indicating their website and contact information from
Perfect.
there.
Thank you, Kate. And so also something that I do with the Schenectady Theater for Children is called the Great Minds series. And in that series, we have several actors who portray various characters from history. And we have a man who portrays James Madison, which is very exciting. We have a woman who portrays Rachel Carson.
Oh, really?
And she is right now developing Grandma Moses, and so that should be available within a few months. It takes a long time and a lot of work to research and put together the performances. So
Not to mention the costumes.
oh, and costumes, and that's a big part of the fun too. And at the Children's Theater, we have a fairly extensive costume shop, and we'd be very happy to help any actors who might be interested in creating a character. And also we have Georgia O'Keeffe, and Kate and I had the great honor in July of being part of Georgia O'Keeffe Week at Weowaka on Lake George, and Kate told the story of Georgia O'Keeffe's life at Abiquiu and her later years, and I tell the story in character as Georgia O'Keeffe from her birth to her the end of her life, and I focus a lot on her Lake George years because I often do it at Lake George.
I was at Kate's presentation where she wove Georgia O'Keeffe's art into her story. Do you do that?
I do the same thing, yeah.
you?
It's difficult to do it without her pictures, so.
Yeah.
I have a slideshow that accompanies mine, and I use her own words. She published a book when in her 80s, and there's every time you turn a page, there's a reproduction of one of her works of art and her own words talking about it. Not what the critics said. It's definitely not what Freud would have said. What she says about it.
And I have that same book, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I try to use her words as much as possible, because only, and to quote her, only she could know how her paintings were made.
Yes, the introduction said, many unusual things, I think. It's something like, that's not quite right.
Odd things have been said about me with words, and that's why she trusts shapes and colors more than words. And so, yeah, it's a very beautiful book. And we could check, but this library had the companion video that was the PBS production that went along with the publication of this book, and it was a VHS. So I don't know if this library can still has it, but it was the only copy I could find, and it's a beautiful companion to that book.
I remember seeing that the first time. It stays with you because she's walking across the desert, talking, and I think it was her young male companion who was the producer.
Juan Hamilton, yeah.
So that they're close in so many ways, and all that richness just sits on the film. So it was quite extraordinary.
Yes.
You drew from that when you put your program together.
I did, yeah. And what was it was remarkable to see her, hear her voice, see her movements, and I tried to take those mannerisms and bring them into my performance. But one thing that struck me, in her 80s, she moved like a ballet dancer. She was so graceful, even as an old woman. Just really remarkable spirit and truly beautiful person.
Well, I take tap dance lessons at the Clifton Park Senior Center twice a week from a former Rockette, and she says I can spot a Rockette walking down the street. That she was going to some meeting, alumni meeting, and she doesn't know all the former Rockettes, and she said to her boyfriend, I think she's a Rockette. And indeed, they both turned into the same place.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes,
yeah. They do. They have a posture, and they carry it with them all their lives.
Yes.
Well, I'll never be confused with being a Rockette, but I just got to say that, obviously.
Well, I'm too short, so.
I'm glad you straightened us out.
I know, yeah, right. Please go back over a little bit about the camps, because my image of camp is like s'mores and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, sure.
But when you have these kids for a period of 2 to 3 weeks, what happens? What do you do with them?
So in our winter camp, and spring camp is 1 week long, and then the summer camps are 2 weeks. And so the kids, for the summer camps, they're putting on a play from, and the kids actually the first day they audition for roles. Some of the kids want to be on stage, some would rather take a backstage role, and they're welcome to do that. So they audition for roles, they talk about their characters, they play, they do acting games, character development. We have a great big box of hats, and on the first, it's a wonderful icebreaker. The kids just put on the hats and just take on the roles of who they think would wear that hat, and it's pretty remarkable to watch. And we're very fortunate. We have a small studio space at Rotterdam Mall, via Port Rotterdam.
Yeah, right.
And next door is an empty space that they've been very generous in letting us use during the camps. And when I say empty, I mean empty, and the kids can just play physical games, run, duck, duck, goose, whatever they're working on at that
Bounce
time.
off the walls.
Yeah. So in Treasure Island, which was our camp in July, they actually choreographed swordplay, and these little tiny kids were had swords, and you could see the choreography as they broke apart and came together, and it's like a beautiful ballet of sword fighting, and they learned that in our beautiful empty space. It was
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the winter camp, or pardon me, that's the summer camps. The winter camps are only a week long, and we were very fortunate to have some members of our story circle come to our spring camp in April. That was the spring camp, right? Yeah. And work with our kids, and we had a storytelling camp. And Joe was one of our volunteers, and
I was terrified. I was terrified.
but after 5 minutes,
It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
It was really to develop a story, and they got into the stories that they had thought of, and we just had a blast.
well, what struck me at the final performance, these, I don't know, 12, 14 kids, in 1 week, all of them, from the little tiniest ones who could barely read yet to the teenagers, learned at least one story, and some multiple stories in a week. That was remarkable right there. And the range of storytelling really struck me. There was traditional folk and fairy tales, there were personal stories, there were tall tales.
Right.
I'm trying to remember, just you name it. A historical story. They had it all. It was truly remarkable.
And personal stories.
Yeah.
It's hard to craft those.
It is, and especially when you're 12.
Right. And the performances at the end of camp, are they open to the public?
They are always open to the
Yeah.
public, and they're free, except for the ones we do at Maybe Farm. Maybe Farm asks for a small donation of $5, but it's a beautiful space. But in our space, it's always free, and the public is more than welcome to come.
And the public's also welcome to make a donation to
Yes.
support the Children's Theater, but
Of course.
that's not mandatory. It's just a really good thing to do. And I just have to really compliment you, because you get the kids active and over that first step of their first perhaps performance, and it just really is wonderful to be part of it.
Well,
Congratulations.
you mentioned Children at the Well a few minutes ago, Kate, in the book that was published, and I just feel that programs like the Schenectady Theater for Children and Children at the Well are invaluable. And we've watched our graduates from Children at the Well go on to do wonderful things, not only educationally for their education, but in the community. I just saw a young Califala, you remember,
Yeah.
at a rally for 2 men who were arrested 15 years ago
Right.
as suspected Muslim terrorists, and that's a whole nother story. But Califala was there at the dinner, and I saw his father, and we chatted for a bit, and he said Califala is going to law school now.
Right, going to
his brother,
Northeastern,
his brother Omar is graduating from
RPI.
Yes, RPI. Thank you.
He's graduating with his master's
Yeah.
on top of his bachelor's
Right.
in computer science.
And his father he was very emphatic that Children at the Well was a wonderful experience for his children, and certainly gave them not just the comfort in speaking in front of people, but this sense of justice. And,
Justice, yeah.
And Schenectady Theater for Children also gives kids those skills.
Right.
So
And those are
the arts are so important.
those skills are not necessarily something that fit in with the normal school curriculum. And so some kids can absolutely shine at storytelling that have never found a niche in the academic community up until that point in
It's
time.
so very true.
And then they blossom out.
What we're hearing, though, and especially with our Great Minds series, we provide at this Schenectady Theater for Children, we provide a study guide, and with our shows that we put on for the schools, libraries, whoever would like us to come and perform for them, our main stage productions that we do with adult actors, and we provide study guides, and for the Great Minds we provide study guides, and we are always very careful to include not just arts activities for the kids or information about the authors or the artistic side, but also how does it fit into the broader curriculum of science, technology, things that the kids are
Social studies.
yeah, social. Yeah, exactly. There's a whole lot going on with the arts, and we always feel like this is just one way to convince people that they are just as important as the science and technology.
Right, and I don't believe you mentioned who you portray in The Great Minds. George
O'Keeffe, yep. And
but
also Mother Jones.
Yes.
And I'm hoping to be performing Mother Jones at Weowaka next summer. So that's what I know she'll be out there. She's one of my favorite characters to portray, and a lot of people don't
Speak to her a lot? Do you?
I do. Actually, I channel her a whole lot. She's, many people just know the name from the magazine, and, well, who was she? And she was a labor organizer in the late 19th and early 20th century. By her accounts, she lived to be 100 years old, which is her account. But her life does span a good part of the 20th century, the latter part of the 19th century, and she died in 1930. So she, in her time, she was called the most dangerous woman in America. And
Whoa.
yes.
I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg might have that title.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And she says that great men trembled at her name. And those great men were presidents and industrial leaders, and even union leaders were very nervous when she came around. So she was a very powerful woman, and her story is still important today because the fight, the things that she fought for are things that we're still fighting for. For example, equal pay,
Right.
Safe working conditions. The miners in Chile a couple of years ago, who were trapped in the mine, the conditions that brought about that situation, you can read about in her autobiography. Those were the exact conditions that she and the other coal miners union members were fighting for.
The same issue precipitated a disaster in Buchanan, West Virginia.
Exactly right. Yep.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah. So ventilation, proper training, all these things. It's still going on today.
Not just parakeets.
Yeah. And what I like to say is there's no such thing as clean oil or clean coal. We don't talk about clean coal. There's no such thing.
Your threads are so interesting. We could go on
Oh my goodness.
weaving them together. Do you have a story you want to share with
I have a couple of them actually.
Would you share that now, and then we'll come back and see what's going on too. We'll continue the threads.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you,
Great,
Joe.
thank you.
So I chose earlier while we were talking, Kate and Joe were talking about connections at the conference that they went to recently, and stories are so important and connect us in so many ways. And one of the ways that stories I feel are important for me, I tell a lot of family stories, and these stories connect me not just to my family, but people often say to me, oh, my brothers and sisters did those things, and so it connects us in a greater community. But one story that I love to tell is a story about a baby. And as a grandmother of 5, I get to see babies a lot. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the story when I finish telling it. So I'm going to take off my glasses, if that's okay with everybody. Can you see me better now? So Krishna, and many of you know Krishna as the blue god, it pleased Krishna to come to earth as a baby. And of course, as a baby, he needed a mother and a father. So he was given to Yashoda and to Yashoda's husband, and they raised him from infancy. And when Yashoda accepted Krishna, she already had a little boy named Balarama. And as Krishna grew up, Balarama was given the responsibility of watching his little brother. And as little brothers can be, Krishna was a bit of a pest. And Balarama and his friends often would ask Yashoda to please not force them to take care of this little baby boy. And as a toddler, he would follow his brother around everywhere. He idolized Balarama. And one day, he was following Balarama and his friends, and the boys were climbing trees. They were climbing plum trees, and they were picking the plums, but they didn't want to eat them yet. They were going to save them for later. So they were up there in the tops of the trees. Of course, Krishna was just a baby. He was down at the base of the tree watching all of this, and they would throw the plums down to the ground. Well, pretty soon, one of the boys said, "Balarama, look at Krishna." And there was Krishna sitting on the ground, shoving those plums in his mouth as fast as he could. And the plum juice was dripping down his chin. Oh, he was as happy as could be. But while he was picking up those plums, he was also picking up dirt and shoving that in his mouth, as babies will often do. So the plum juice was mixed with dirt. It was dripping down his chin. And the boys said, "Krishna, stop eating those plums. They're for us. We're saving them for later." And Krishna wouldn't stop. So finally, Balarama yelled, "Yashoda, come get your baby. He's eating dirt." And you know there's nothing to get a mother out of the house faster than to hear that her baby is eating dirt. So Yashoda came running out, and she picked up that baby, and she looked at him, and she said, "Krishna, open your mouth." Krishna wouldn't open his mouth. "Krishna, open your mouth. Krishna, open your mouth." You asked for it. So the baby opened his mouth, and Yashoda looked in. And what did she see? But the entire universe spinning around in Krishna's mouth. She saw the sun, she saw the earth and the other planets, she saw the moon, she saw down there on the earth, she saw India. She saw her own village. She saw herself holding that baby, and that baby's mouth was open, and inside his mouth was another universe, another earth, all the planets, the nebulae, everything spinning around. She saw shooting stars. She saw, it just made her so dizzy, and she couldn't take it anymore, and she said, "Krishna, close your mouth." And he did. And she looked at this baby. "Who are you?" she asked him. And she held him to her breast, and she went inside. And the boys watched this, and they wondered about babies and mothers. And that's the story of Krishna. Holds the universe in his mouth.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And I love that story, and I've known about that story for a long time, but I never told it until about 5 years ago. I'm sorry, 4 years ago, or so. My granddaughter will be 4 on September 25th. And when I went to visit her in the hospital when she was born, my son was holding her in his lap, and I was behind them looking at the new baby. And she opened her mouth, and I saw it.
You saw it?
I did. I saw the universe in her mouth, and I've never seen that in any other baby before or since. And as soon as I saw it, I said, "Oh my goodness, it's true." So I call her Krishna. And there are a lot of things about her that are pretty special. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's, I also believe that every baby holds all of those possibilities.
Wonderful.
Nurturing children is so important. So that's my story about baby Krishna.
Just a question. When you say 4 years ago, the story came to you because of seeing the mouth of your granddaughter. How did you harvest a story from another tradition?
That's a good question.
You're not a Hindu.
I'm not. That's true. And I've had the very good fortune in working with the kids and children at the well, many of whom are Hindu, and listening to them tell their stories and talking to their parents. And I was a little nervous to tell that story in public because it is, as you say, it's not part of my tradition. And this is a dilemma I think that many storytellers have. And I did one evening when I was telling stories at Emmett Treville Thatcher Nature Center by Thatcher Park, an Indian family was in the audience. And it was on my list of stories to tell. And, you know, as storytellers, we have the list, and maybe we tell them, maybe we don't. And maybe another story asks to be told while you're standing there in front of an audience. And I hesitated, and I said, I'm going to try. I'm going to do this. So I told the story, and the little boy in the family, he was about 8 years old, and he said, do you know any more stories about Krishna? Oh my goodness, I do know a few. He said, do you know the story of Krishna and Kalia? And I said, I don't know that story. So through the magic of cell phones, his mother got a picture of Krishna and Kalia on her phone, and I was, again, like the universe in Krishna's mouth, I was vaguely aware of the story, but I didn't know the particulars. He said, so this is the story, and we looked at the picture on the phone, and he told me some of the details, and then he says, okay, now tell the story. So, I said, I'll be telling stories again here next month. Maybe you could come back and I'll tell that story. So I learned the story for this little boy, and he never came back.
Oh.
But I've told it a couple of times, and it's a pretty special story also. It's about in the Vrindava, where the village where Krishna lived with the other gopis, the cowherders, there's a river, the Yamuna River, which today is horribly polluted, unfortunately, but it was polluted then because a snake lived in the river. And this snake was spilling his venom throughout the river, and not just the water, but the trees and the plants were all dying because of the snake's venom in the river. And so one day Krishna went to the river and saw the devastation and decided he needed to do something about it. So he climbed a tree, and the text says that everywhere he put his foot, a lotus blossom would appear. The stories of Krishna are just so poetic. And he got to the top of the tree, and he dove into the river, and without a splash. We know somebody else who can dive without a splash. And when he entered the river, he started to swim, and the text says that he splashed around like a baby elephant, just churning the water because he was trying to get Kalia to come. And Kalia came and immediately wrapped Krishna in his coils and started to squeeze him. And the people came to see what was going on, and they saw Krishna, who was just a child at the time, not a baby anymore, but certainly just still a boy, being squeezed in the coils of this snake. And they were all frightened and didn't know what to do. And Yashoda came running, and she saw what was going on, and she fainted, and some thought that she had died, but she was still alive. And they let her, they didn't want to wake her up because they didn't want her to see this horrible battle going on. But it wasn't a battle. Krishna was obviously in what seemed to them he was in distress. But Balarama, his brother, said, Krishna's got this. Don't worry, everybody. Let's just sit back and watch the show. So Krishna could see that the people were getting worried about him. So Krishna made his body grow and swell until finally he broke free of the coils, and the Kalia is a serpent with 100 heads. Ooh. So Krishna jumped on top of one of the heads and started to dance. And he gave us everything, including the gift of dance. So he did pirouettes and arabesques and cha-chas and hip-hop. He just jumped all around on all the heads, and the poor snake didn't know what to do, he couldn't catch him. But while Krishna was doing this dancing, the heavens opened up and great music came down to give him something to dance to. And the snake, meanwhile, started to vomit and spew out venom and horrible, what should have been horrible smells and toxic chemicals into the river, all of a sudden they became beautiful flowers and they could smell perfume in the air as the snake from these 100 heads just kept spewing this horrible stuff out into the river. And Krishna, meanwhile, was dancing on his head until finally he was spent and couldn't do anything anymore. And the people, of course, all cheered. And then Krishna had a conversation with Kalia and said, you know, we really don't want you here. You don't belong here. You're polluting our river. And Kalia's wives came along and they talked to Krishna and they said, well, we've been telling Kalia we really don't want to live here anyway, and we should really be out in the big ocean where there's lots of room for us, and we're a very large family. So Krishna convinced them all to leave. And as I read this, I pictured them, all these snakes packing up their suitcases and swimming away out the river into the ocean. And they were never seen again. And that's, I didn't tell that very well. I wasn't planning to tell that story today, but I like that story for many, many levels, And one of them is that when we think about inner child, and people have, the Healing Story Alliance addresses these things. Yeah. And when you think of the things that are, as a child, no one listened to me. I was small. I was always told to be quiet. I never felt powerful. I never felt strong. Yet Krishna, as a child, was able to save his village and the river.
And he did it without killing his enemy.
Right. He was able to reason with his enemy. Yeah. And so anyhow, that's one of the reasons I really love that story. And Kate and Joe and I were talking earlier about how a story I tell, I have one idea in mind what the story means to me, but my audience has so many other emotions and feelings, and
it reminds of things that we've heard of or that happened to us. So it takes us different places than you've ever been.
Right. And so it's always wonderful to have the feedback and hear what people get out of the story.
Because your snake in the river reminded me of an Iroquois story about Niagara Falls, and there was a snake that was poisoning the wells, and even healthy young people were dying.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So this must be in many cultures.
Yeah.
And obviously it would be because not knowing if now we can test water, and but when you come across a foreign body of water and you're thirsty, is this safe to drink? Can I? That's really.
But many heads are just swimming. I just want to tell you, I want to hold on to a couple of those threads, but I'd like to encourage Kate to kind of give us an overview of what's happening in storytelling in the next month.
Right. Starting on September 4th, First Tuesday's Tales and Stuff at Arthur's Market in the Stockade section of Schenectady. We'll have Bonnie.
Meehan.
Yeah, I wrote Bonnie Nolan. I'm going, no, Bonnie Meehan. As the featured teller, stories, songs, and dancing among the falling leaves. Not necessarily on the 100 heads of Kalia, but
we're gonna have we won't have a snake there, but you're welcome.
But actually, she's a belly dancer, which is sort of like a snake charmer. No, we digress. We digress.
But you're welcome to come and tell a story, read a poem, sing a song, play an instrument, and listen to Bonnie tell her stories and do her dance.
Yes.
And eat lunch and eat dinner. There you go.
And then the Interfaith Story Circle, which is a companion program to Children at the Well, is holding their first meeting of the 2018-19 season on September 6th at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady, Stories of Seeking Truth. And the featured teller is Ashok Ramasubramanian. And he has stories that have been featured on the Moth Radio Hour.
Right, and he's a professor
of engineering at Union College, from which I graduated in my geekyhood.
Your geekyhood.
So that should be a wonderful program. And then Claire, our very own Claire Nolan, will be finishing the Not Just for Kids storytelling series at Schoharie Crossing in Fort Hunter on Sunday, September 9th. Stories from my backyard and beyond. Adventures begin at home. Yes?
Whoa, whoa.
Oh, her family stories are just
And Schoharie Crossing
fabulous.
is the best kept secret in the Capital District. It is a gorgeous place to visit and to listen to stories, and we encourage you to drive on over and listen on.
And then the following Friday, another series that Joe has started, Shawnee Evenings at the Irish American Heritage Museum on Broadway in Albany. I will be appearing with Margaret French, telling stories of the kindness of strangers on September 14th.
And usually we have soda bread at intermission,
Num num.
because one of the board members loves to make soda bread, and we let it.
And Irish butter.
Irish butter, yeah.
Yes. Then Word Plays is back, our 12th season. Can you imagine? Our 12th season at Proctor's. And the topic is Mavericks. That's Claire's family all over. Sunday, September 16th, 2 p.m., up in the Fenimore Gallery. It's on the second floor. Take the elevators by the box office, up one level, and we're right there.
And we don't have Irish soda bread, but we do have really good sweets and treats at intermission.
Yes. Then, right here at Colonie Town Library will be our next Story Circle meeting, where we share works in progress. And you can get as much or as little help as you want. Some people are warming up a story that they've told before, and they just want to tell it to faces. Microwave ovens are and cats are really not the same. Or they have an idea and they don't quite know where to go from, and then they want a lot of information. So 6 to 8, September 18th.
It qualifies as good fellowship, and it qualifies as good learning, and we encourage you to come and try telling a story.
Then on September 21st, Claire, you told me that's the Friday, you and Eileen Egan-Mack will be at the Kelly Center for the Adirondacks in Niskayuna.
It's on St. David's Lane, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
And the topic of your program?
The stories of the season.
Stories of the season. And
It's the fall equinox.
Fall equinox. Special time. So you can see on the slide where it's located, and the Eileen Egan-Mack she's been on this program before also. I don't know if she's going to do any singing, but she has.
She usually does. Yeah,
yes.
she usually does.
It's quite special.
She has a beautiful voice.
Then, the Saratoga Storytelling Open Mic has moved to Cafe Lena exclusively. It used to be every other month, but now it'll be, and it's also moved to the 4th Tuesday of the month. So on September 25th, the featured teller there will be Elliot Nieves, who has been on this show. He comes all the way from Ithaca to participate in our events. Bless him. So that's a fabulous evening, a modest charge, and he's a wonderful teller, and he's also an actor.
Right, he's an actor.
Yes,
He's been a school teacher
Yes,
in his earlier life.
an artistic.
Art teacher.
Yes. So that's what I know about September. That's quite a lot.
It's a good lineup, and we encourage you to kind of check the website, Story Circle at Proctor's, because a lot of these... .org, right. That a lot of these events are posted there, and other ones that may come up in the meantime. And a special plug for the meeting on the 18th. It's a pretty informal gathering, but it's structured enough to get your stories out. And we like to encourage new folks to kind of arrive and tell and meet us. So hope to see you at that 18th meeting.
Mm-hmm. And then just wanted to remind you of our 12th season at Proctor's. We have 5 word plays scheduled and a celebration. whose topic is sparks.
Sparks.
And we always like to mention that you can also find us on YouTube anytime you want. Storycircle@proctors.org. Click on YouTube. Over 200 stories are waiting for your demand.
And if you wanted to kind of meet Kalafala Osmond, who we were talking about earlier, and several other people we've mentioned, they're all on those YouTube presentations of stories that they've told on this show. So great. Thank you, Kate. That was wonderful. What a great lineup. Man. I'd like to pick up a thread of your adventure with Thatcher Park and the Nature Center, because it seems to be a lovely fit, and I'm always amazed when I've been to the Nature Center how wonderful it is, and generally how few other people are there. It's again, if you're camping up there, then people come in there. But when you mention the Nature Center, people say, "Oh, is it over near the cliffs?" And it's really not over near the cliffs.
It's on the lake.
It's on the lake.
Yeah.
What lake?
Thompson's Lake, of course. And it's very beautiful there.
Yeah.
It really is. I just, to back up a little bit, you mentioned the open mic at Cafe Lena, which is a wonderful resource, and you mentioned the modest fee, and it is. I saw an advertisement for a performer at Cafe Lena earlier in the summer, and the ticket price was $65.
Oh, so we're talking five here.
We
five.
charge five, right.
We aren't that famous, I got to tell you.
So Christy Keegan, who is one of the organizers, along with Margaret French and Janine Laverty. Christy called me the other day and asked me if I would perform in October as the featured teller for open mic, and she asked me to do Georgia O'Keeffe.
Oh.
So there'll be something different. So,
wow.
So I just...
Yes, I saw you tell that at the Schenectady Library.
Exactly right, yeah. Saratoga Library.
Saratoga,
yeah.
that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's okay. But anyhow, my point is storytelling is just so many different things. And so it's what Kate does with people from history in telling their stories, and what people like me with the Great Minds do in telling the stories of people from history is just one type of story. Then you mentioned all the other aspects of storytelling, and it's how human brains are wired.
Actually, it truly is how human brains are wired, and it has been proven scientifically. That's the way we organize things. I like to think of it as there's this framework, and then all these facts you could like little Post-its that just kind of cling to it, or maybe they're color forms if you remember color forms, or anyways. I digress. We only have 12 minutes left, and I bet you have another story, which hopefully is less than 12 minutes.
It is, and it's one of my favorite stories. I started telling this story because I'm from a large family. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and we are 7 sisters. And this is a story about 7 brothers. And I was able to tell this story at my father's graveside. And I felt that it was an important reminder, not just to my brothers and sisters who were all there, but to everyone to look out for each other and bring each other home. So this is called The 7 Ravens. And when I told it the other night, I said there were 8 of them. And it was like, where did the 8th one come from?
It just flew in out of nowhere.
It makes finishing the story interesting, I guess. There you go.
But isn't it true, though? You're telling a story. It's like, why did I say that? So now you know some secrets of storytelling. So once upon a time, one of the few stories I begin with once upon a time, so I'll say it again. Once upon a time, there was a family of 7 brothers. And they were very typical boys. They loved each other, they hated each other, they played with each other, they shoved each other around, they helped each other with their homework. They did all the things that you would imagine 7 brothers would do. And the mother and father loved their boys very much, but every time the mother was expecting another baby, everybody, including all the boys, hoped and prayed that this time she might have a girl. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a baby sister? So, once again, the mother was pregnant for her 8th time, and everybody was hoping and praying for a girl. And sure enough, when the baby was born, it was a girl, and everybody was very happy until they saw that the baby girl was not well and perhaps might die. And the boys were very scared. The mother and father were very upset, and they sent for the priest and they sent for the doctor, and they sent the boys out of the house. But before they sent the boys out of the house, the father wanted to give them something to do, and he reached on a high shelf, a shelf that the boys must never ever touch anything up there, and he brought down a beautiful crystal pitcher, and he gave it to the oldest son, and he said, take this pitcher to the well and fill it with water and bring it back so the priest can baptize your little sister. And so the boys went out to the well. Well, when they got there, they started to push and shove. Each one of them wanted to have the honor of lowering that pitcher into the well to get the water to baptize their sister. Well, in their pushing and shoving, that pitcher fell into the well, and they watched it disappear into the black water down below. Well, none of them wanted to be the one to go in and tell their mother and father what they had done. So they stood there arguing and talking about it and worrying about it until finally they said the youngest one was going to have to go in. Being one of the youngest ones, I know how that feels. But the father and mother, meanwhile, are in the house with the baby. Everybody's very upset, and the father is wondering where the water is to baptize the baby. And he says, those boys are no more use to me than a flock of ravens. And as soon as he said that, he saw 7 ravens fly by the open window, and he knew that he had cursed his sons. Well, as luck would have it, the little girl did not die. In fact, she got well. In fact, she grew up to be strong and healthy and smart and all the things that they had hoped for in a little girl. But they never told her about her brothers who had disappeared on the day she was born. Well, as she grew up, she went out into the village, she made friends, she went to school, and she started to hear rumors. And she came home one day and she said to her mother, is it true? Is it true? Do I have 7 older brothers who disappeared on the day I was born? And her mother said, yes, it was true. And she said, I'm going to find them. I'm going out into the world and I am going to find my brothers. Oh, no, you're much too young. Stay home. Wait until you're older. No, I have to find them now. Well, that night, while her mother and father were sleeping, the little girl went into their room. And on the table next to her father, she found his little knife, and she put it in her pocket. And on the table next to her mother, she found her ring, and she put that into her pocket. And then she went into the kitchen, and she found a loaf of bread, and she wrapped that in her handkerchief, and she put that in her pocket. And she found a chicken leg, and she put that in her pocket too. She didn't want to be hungry on her journey. Well, the little girl traveled. She traveled so far. She went far, far to the south, and it was so hot, and the sun burned down on her, and she called up to the sun, "Sun, have you seen my brothers?" But the sun said, No, it's much too hot here. No one can survive. I've never seen your brothers. So she traveled to the north, far, far to the north, to those barren mountains, and it was so cold, and the moon shone down coldly on her, and she called up to the moon, "Have you seen my brothers?" And the moon said, "No, it's much too cold here. I've never seen your brothers." So she went to the stars, and they twinkled. They were so friendly as they twinkled above her, those constellations she'd been looking at all her life. She said, hey, you stars, have you seen my brothers?" And one of the little stars said, yes, I look down on the earth and I see everything, and I have seen your brothers. "Well, where are they?" she asked. "They're living inside a glass mountain." "A glass mountain? Well, where is it?" "Well, I don't know," said the star. "Everything looks the same down there. I just see shapes and things moving around. I can't tell where things are, but I'm sure if you walk far enough, you'll find it." So the little girl walked, and she walked for days and days and nights and nights. She walked for such a long time until finally, in the distance, she saw it sparkling in the sunlight, the glass mountain. It had to be. What else could it be? And she went to that glass mountain, and there was a door. And she tried to open the door, but it was locked. And she poked her finger in, but it wouldn't reach. And so she looked around for a stick or something on the ground, but then she thought, my chicken bone. Because after she had eaten that chicken leg, she had put the bone in her pocket. But when she reached into her pocket, the bone was gone. She looked everywhere. She couldn't find it. So she took the knife that she had taken from her father, and she cut off her pinky finger. And she was able to put that in and work the lock till the door opened, and she wrapped her hand in her handkerchief. And she went inside the glass mountain. The door closed behind her, and everything was silent. She couldn't hear a thing. Outside, she could see the trees blowing in the breeze. She could see the clouds. She could see the blue sky. She could see the birds, but she couldn't hear anything. It was so quiet. Can you imagine what that would be like? And as she walked up through the glass mountain, she came to a staircase, and she climbed to the top of the staircase, and there was another door, a wooden door, and she knocked on the door, and the door opened. And a funny little man came out, and he said, "Oh, you're here. They've been waiting for you. Your brothers, they live here in the glass mountain." And he brought her up to the top of the mountain to a room. And in the room was a big table. And the table had 7 chairs around it. And in front of the chairs were 7 plates. And the man said, "Wait here." And he left, and she looked around this strange room. It was at the top of the glass mountain, and it was open to the breezes and the sunlight and the bird song. And the man came back, and he had a loaf of bread and a pitcher of water, and he put a piece of bread on each of those 7 plates, and he filled each of the goblets with some clear water, and then he left. And the girl, who was very hungry by this time, went from plate to plate, and she nibbled just a piece of the bread so no one would notice, and she took a little sip of water. And in the last goblet, she took the ring from her pocket, and she put it in one of the goblets, in that last goblet. And then she went and hid in a corner of the room, and she waited. Well, she didn't have to wait for long. Soon she heard a whirring of wings outside the window, and in they came, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 black ravens. And they stood around the table. They stood on those chairs, and they started to peck at the bread and sip the water. And they said, "Somebody's been eating the bread." And they looked in the cups, and they said, "Somebody's been drinking the water." And the littlest raven put his beak in the cup, and it came out with a ring on his beak. And they looked at that ring, and they all recognized it. Could it be? Has she come? Has she found us? Will she bring us home? Well, the girl couldn't stand it anymore. She stepped forward. She said, I'm here, my brothers. I'm here to take you home." And they huddled around her. And at that moment, they all turned back into boys. And they hugged her, and they kissed her, and they loved her more when she showed them her hand and how she had sacrificed her finger so she could rescue them. And the 8 children went home in great celebration. And that's the story of the 7 ravens.
Oh.
I always start to cry when I get to that part where she comes out and says she's there.
Yes.
I shuddered when you took off the finger.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yes. There are so many wonderful things, but we have to say goodbye. The time has flown.
It really has.
Like the ravens.
Like the ravens and good cheer and the summer breeze. We're complete, almost.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, listeners.
And we'll look for you next month.
Good cheer.
Good cheer.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning